Okay, we've got Bob Hite, who is known as the Bear.
Oh, cool.
Right. And who have we got over here? We've got Sleepy Larry Taylor, who is the Mole.
And I'm ready to get it on tonight at the...
Henry?
This is Henry Vestine.
Right.
Hi, kid. This is Al Wilson.
Say it again.
This is Al Wilson.
Good. One more. We've got Fito, who doesn't speak English,
Bing.
who I haven't met. Hello, the Bean. Phil Spiro.
Do they know the voice yet?
I'm not on.
To make some sort of statement about where Canned Heat is at and why they're there.
We're on a hate campaign.
You're on a hate campaign.
Right.
Who do you hate?
Everybody.
Why?
Oh, you know, it's just what's happening. Sing into the tape, did they?
Right, I did.
Oh, they wouldn't understand that, right? All right, it's all a joke, guys.
Okay, because I'm too lazy to edit this.
Oh,
The Owl. The Owl. Al is Al Wilson, who indeed comes from Boston, right?
No, he doesn't come from Boston.
Yes.
Arlington Heights.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the arrangements thing. Where does most of your material come from? Do you steal it? Do you make it up out of whole cloth, or what?
We wrote Bullfrog Blues. Don't try to take that away from us.
Our general policy is to claim traditional items in which the original performer is deceased. Thus Bullfrog Blues, that famous Canned Heat original.
Well, I'm not thinking so much of copyrights as, you know, the
the
musical
music.
end of it.
Well, there's a bunch of things. A combination of Mississippi guitar parts and then added features. Like, say, Henry might play lead on it.
Well, how do you do the thing? Somebody sits down and writes up an arrangement, or you start out with a basic
I
thing
come
and
in
work
with
up?
it, and then it's revised by the others. So I come in with the original thing, but then it's like little changes are made in it.
Okay.
To accommodate everybody.
Like, how long does it usually take to get something working to the point where it's pretty much what would be recorded?
Recorded?
In terms of arrangement. Or do you
in terms of record, well, see, now the first record was done like there's no special preparation made for recording. So we'd learn all them songs. We'd take about 20 or 30 minutes to learn the song. But for the second record, we did it. We recorded. Yeah, sure. We rehearsed interminably. Like maybe 2-3 hours on each one.
And it shows on the record.
Okay, this is for getting the arrangement down right, rather than the techniques of the arrangement, or?
Well, this was done because we used a lot of overdubbing and things like that, so we had to do a lot of plotting as to what we were going to do.
Your second one has a lot of overdubbing compared to the first one.
Yeah, there's only one or two that do not involve overdubbing. That would be Turpentine and the Boogie.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, because... Stop.
Hey, right there. Saying when Fito was the drums. You're crazy.
Well, this overdubbing thing brings up an interesting point. A lot of... That's okay, man. A lot of groups like the Airplane and the Beatles are doing so much overdubbing and so much pure studio work that it's literally impossible for them to do the same stuff on stage. Do you feel you guys are headed toward that direction? And if not, or if so, what do you think of that type of work?
See, the only reason we can't do it is because of economic realities. Like, we could play those songs if we had enough money to bring a horn section and piano. So all the jobs have 3 tambours waiting in their wings.
Well, now in some places there are 3 Henry Vestines on the tape.
That's true. That would be a problem. That would be a serious problem.
It's hard to buy more than 1 Vestine. At least on the
for
open
that
market.
passage, for that little section. And we can't have Henry playing rhythm and lead at the same time, and I can't play guitar and harmonic at the same time. So in those senses, then we're limited. We can't do what we do in the record. But see, that's the thing. Records are different.
Well,
than live performances.
Are you going to be going to more work of this kind on your records, or
yes?
Do you have any idea?
We're going to try and play liver. We're going to try and play liver when it's live, and then you try and play more recorded when we record.
Okay.
We don't want to talk.
Yeah. Is this for the radio?
No, this is for
okay.
for the paper.
We're going to play a kind of psychedelic blues.
No, never.
I'm saying that we're going to stretch out, you know, we're going to play with more freedom, especially the rhythm section. and we are really into. We were talking about it last night, you see, and I couldn't sleep thinking about it. So I want to say it, you know. We're gonna play more free now, from now on, okay? We're gonna play with blues influence, but we're gonna play with freedom.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
That's it.
Is the kind of thing that you're thinking about doing, the kind of thing somebody else is doing that you can point to and say, like such and such? Okay. It's a new thing.
Like you heard last night, man. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Albert Eiler
Different than we've been
Blues
doing,
Converse.
like we did when you heard us in San Francisco, and you know,
Right.
it's a little bit more free. That's the only difference, and I think it makes.
Instead of taking 50% of freedom, we're gonna take 100%.
Well, where does this leave the vocals? Because that's mainly an instrumental thing. Well, let's get an official thing from this. How about it, vocalists?
Back to the blues. Back to the
Okay,
blues.
back to the blues.
Now this is a blues band, and
It ain't no more.
shut up, Mexican. And the whole thing is that people just can do what they want to do. You know, like Henry plays raga once in a while. You know, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not, you know, saying that he shouldn't do it either. Once in a while, I'll go over and kick him when he gets into one of those things. You know. He thinks, you know, that's what's happening. But if that's what he's happy doing, then that's what he's got to do.
Well, I want to get back to this freer thing. Now, where does it stop being blues? Where do you think it stops being blues?
It never does. It never does.
Okay. I don't know. I guess the question I'm asking is really, what do you think? What do you think blues is in terms of from here to there?
Well, like what I would say is that all our influence for the music we play is blues, and so anything we play will be blues influence.
Okay.
A segment of more conservative type numbers, and then a bunch of free type numbers.
Mm-hmm. Now,
It's likely to be two scenes coming down.
This is true for the recording and live.
That's right.
Well, what you've got to dig, man.
This is great. He's going to be worn out.
Well, that's what you're after, isn't
When
it?
we play Dust My Broom, it's still going to be good Mississippi blues. You know, when we play It Hurts Me Too, it's still going to be does their own thing by themselves. That it gets like, you know, freer than normal. Last night, I think there was like only 3 numbers where we really spread out and just, you know, became free again, if you want to use that term.
Well, that's a good point. What about instrumentation? Now, I know Al plays more than just guitar and harp. How about you, Henry? Do you play just guitar? Okay, so do you see any future for adding more instrumentation without adding more people?
No. Oh, that's a possibility.
Adding more people?
Oh, no.
You want to play one?
No, adding different instruments to the band.
Electric one.
Yeah, we're going to get an electric one string.
An electric one string?
Right. That's very important.
What's an electric
I don't know
one
how
string
yet,
now?
but we're going to.
You mean like a one string from the back alley?
Well, have you heard either one string Sam or... Yeah, right. We're going to get an electric one string.
Wow.
The little drone happening. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's one thing. We're into the drone. No chord changes. Well, have you heard either one string Sam or... Yeah, right. We're going to get an electric one string. The little drone happening. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's one thing. We're into the drone. No chord changes. Yeah, that's one thing.
Everybody doing the drone bit?
Well, a bunch of guys doing the drone, then a vocal over it, and then an instrumental lead. Either me or Henry. Like on one song, it might be Henry, say Catfish. So I'll play the drone, Henry.
Catfish.
We'll play lead, and then on like another song, Henry might play the drone, I'll play the lead. But anyway, a lot of drone.
Yeah, really. He's into it.
Last night you decided you were into it?
Yeah.
I saw the look on your face.
I think you made a horse with
I like the money, man.
You're in it for the money. You're in it for the money.
Money.
Right. Okay, if somebody came
We're
up...
going to get put down for that today.
Okay, if somebody came up to you and said, look, I like your band, but I can get you jobs if you'll just play it a little bit different, and that little bit different involves something you didn't think you liked musically.
Well, I
you
would
do it?
normally use the little 4-letter word that Mrs. Wilson hates.
Right.
I won't use that word at the moment out of consideration, but that's what I would tell them to do.
Okay, so you're in it for the money as long as you can do the thing
As long
you're
as we
into
can do what
doing.
we're doing.
Okay.
We will not play anything for anybody else for the sake of getting a job.
That's what I sort of
This
figured.
band broke up because we wouldn't play top 40 music a year and a half ago. You know, they wanted us to work in beer bars and play the top 40, and I wasn't it. We wouldn't do it, and consequently we had to break up because of hire us.
How much hassle have you had after that over doing the thing you want to do?
Not a bit.
Oh, we did.
We've had, where, name one job where they've asked us to play anything but blues since we signed with John Hartman. We had a scene because we played too loud. That was the only scene we had at the Whiskey A Go Go.
Yeah, but we still played loud.
But there was no argument about what kind of music we were playing.
We're gonna play louder now. Double power.
Yeah, well, by the way, I'd like to add that we're adding double equipment that we have now.
Do that again, Larry.
We're adding, I don't know if you saw the amplification we had last night, but we're adding double that. We're adding double that when we get back to California next week.
Why are you doing that?
Well, just power. Power. We just like that power.
I think Al said that you don't turn the amplifiers beyond 2.
No, well, we don't turn them all the way, but just to have that reserve, like when you play great big places. You know, big auditoriums.
Yankee Stadium.
Right. Yeah, well, you know, whatever, like a Coliseum or any kind of big gig that we play, you know, we're starting to play bigger places, you know, so we have to have more power to get through, you know, cut through to the back.
What's the normal reaction to your high volume?
They love it.
They like it. It gets in their heads. You know.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't like. I'm the drummer. I don't like it.
Why don't you like it? Because the drums aren't
I just can't play. I got to sacrifice all the technique and play just with power. That's all. No rhythm, no nothing, just power. Like all the drummers around, you know. Like 85% of the drummers around, you know. They play like that. That's it.
How do you
Power
resolve?
and power, and that's all we need. You know?
Okay, how do you guys resolve this problem?
He made it for about 7 minutes. You know, the psychedelic movement.
Well, how do you resolve this problem? He doesn't
I
like
can't.
loud
There is no
amps.
way.
You guys do. What do you do? Sit on
Well, see, the thing is, it's easy to solve. If you don't like it, you wear earplugs. If you don't like all the volume, that's what you do. So then if you like it, you don't. And it's easy. It's not so complicated a problem as it's made up to be.
Because
Oh, that's true, by the way. The further south we go, the less successful we are.
The further south you go, the less successful you are?
Right. See, that would seem like a paradox, because that's where the blues came from.
Where have you been in the South?
Well, we got this far down as Virginia Beach, Virginia, and that was the worst reception we ever got.
Huh. How long ago was that?
8 months, 10 months.
Well, do you think the cats in the South are into a totally different scene?
Yeah, Boogaloo.
Boogaloo?
Yeah, soul, Sam and Dave. Exclusive interest. That's the Boogaloo belt, in addition to being the Bible belt.
Where have your best receptions been?
Detroit and Boston.
How about the West Coast? That's where you come from.
Ohio is strong.
Bob?
we had very good receptions in Boston, Detroit, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia. So on this trip alone, and so far everything has just been really great.
This is your second road trip, right?
Right. The first road trip, we went over the best here in Boston. We played at the 47. Of course, the people that go to the 47 are funky people, and they go to hear the blues. People at the Boston Tea Party go there because it's the place to go. They don't care what band's playing there. I mean, it's an extra added attraction if there's a good band playing there. But it's a pretty rowdy neighborhood. You know, that neighborhood in there is obvious. Yeah. There's a lot of rowdy people in there. And most of them, I think, dug it last night, you know, although they were there, you know, and having a good time. And I guess that's what's important when you go to a club, is to have a good time. And as long as the people, you know, I guess the music was secondary at first to some of them. I don't notice a lot of people up in the front were all gassing around, all stoned, laying on the floor and going, yeah. All the Hells Angels were there. I had the local Boston Hells Angels. What was the name of the club, Henry?
Devil's Disciples.
The Devil's Disciples. You know, they were all, you know, falling out in the front row, which is groovy, you know. That's why we play our music. You know.
I want to get into background a little. How did you get into blues, and specifically the kind of things the group is doing now, Bob?
Through old records. I've collected old records since I was 6 years old. I'm 25 now, and I bought my first R&B record in 1950 when I was 7 years old. I had a teenage girl living across the street from me, and I used to go around and hang around her and pester her, and you know, she turned me on to the music, and that's how I got into it, through the records, and that's it.
Into blues?
Yeah, the kind of thing you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I was playing with some Congo guys, down in Mexico, about 3 years ago. I got into the blues there. We have another bands out there playing blues. B.B. King, Freddie King stuff mostly. And I become, I start knowing the new types of blues, Mississippi blues and Chicago blues when I got here 1 year ago. Yeah.
It's, I've played the guitar for quite a while in a lot of top 40 groups and stuff, but I always liked blues. I collected records and listened to it all the time.
When I was younger, I used to play was blues, when I first started playing. I like B.B. King tunes and stuff like that. I've always liked it,
So
I played all different kinds of music.
You were a studio musician before you joined Candide.
Yeah, I did a lot of Monkeys, Little Anthony Imperials, a lot of stuff, a lot of different.
What made you join Candide?
Well, I wanted to play some blues. Dug it. And I used to play, like I said before, I used to play, when I was younger, we had groups and used to play B.B. King tunes and all, stuff like that, So I dug what they were doing. Enjoying it.
At that time you couldn't play it and make a living.
Yeah, at the time I couldn't play it and make a living, so,
I see.
I was playing what I could make a living at, but now I'm playing.
I got into it in 1961. I heard a record, LP, The Best of Muddy Waters on Chefs. That did it. I really liked that record, so I got into it. Yeah, after I heard that Muddy Waters, then I heard Robert Johnson and Hooker, and them two, they're soloists, sing and then they play guitar solos. And they sounded really great. So those were like after Muddy Waters, that was it. But see, Muddy Waters, that was like the best harmonica that's ever been on a record, practically. Yeah, definitely on that record. So that got me the harmonica, listening to that record.
What was that,
Little Wallet, right, all through that record.
Blind Lemon who? Blind Lemon Orange?
Blind Lemon Jefferson. And I was struck by a divine revelation, and it was over.
Right.
I got into it.
You've been collecting records since '50, but this was the first country blues
The first country blues record, the pre-war country blues record I ever heard was, well, it wasn't Blind. That was a joke. Blind Lemon. The first one I ever heard was, you can't call Washboard Sam country blues, can you? I think a Big Bill Brunzi record, and on Champion, which was done around 1930, was the first country blues record I ever heard, and I liked it. And I went through a thing that a lot of people did. Jimmy Reed is the cat that really got me into blues. And it's easy to start to like blues by liking Jimmy Reed. I used to be on a big crusade. I used to have people come over to my house that weren't really into blues, and I used to get them into blues by starting them off on Jimmy Reed, and then getting them into Little Walter and then Muddy Waters, and it was a thing. And Elmore James. I used to have a little pattern I'd follow. If they got into Jimmy Reed, then I could always get them into Little Walter or Muddy Waters. And if they got into that, Elmore James was next, and then Robert Johnson, and then from there I had to convert. I used to do that all the time. The first blues record I ever owned, I was only 6 or 7 years old. My father brought it home. See, in California we had jukebox records in all the drugstores and dime stores. And I was sick, and I was a record freak when I was a little kid, like I already said. And he brought me a present home. He grabbed a 9-cent record off the pile. It didn't make any difference what it was, and he just brought it home and gave it to me to make me happy. And it was a record by Thunder Smith called Big Stars Are Falling, and that made an impression on me when I heard it. And that was a long time ago. That was the first blues record I ever had. The second blues record that I ever had was a Boyd Gilmore record, All in My Dreams, which is an Elmore James type thing. And that was like in about 1951. Well, both of those were about 50 or 51. And then I had a mutual friend, and we both collected rock, rhythm and blues records. We were into Fats Domino a lot, and Big J McNeely. We got a bunch of old records from an old folks home in California, and there was a bunch of old jazz records. So we got into that bag, collecting old jazz. And if you're collecting old jazz, the next step, if you're really into the records, is blues. And that's how I got into collecting pre-war records. Of course, when I was younger, even younger than when I started buying rhythm and blues, my parents were into, swing records. Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey. My father played with Sammy Kaye. And
What did he play?
Trumpet. And, you know, so it's, music is where it's at. You know, I've often said if I ever went deaf, I'd just end it all. Because there wouldn't be any sense in, you know, if I had a choice between seeing and hearing, I would rather hear. Which is, you know, a pretty hard choice to make, but that's where I'm at. I don't know what else there is. I collected coins for a while, but what's that?
The kind of thing I'm thinking of is that I think we've all seen that various musical forms like blues or old-time rock and so forth have just sort of a limited commercial lifespan. And I'm always sort of curious what a guy who's really professionally into music would do if the kind of music he was into was no longer commercially profitable.
I think about that a lot, and I really don't know what I would do. When I worked at a record shop, I think I was about 97% correct when I could pick a hit record. When we'd get a batch of new records in, I could usually pick the hits, and I consider myself having a pretty good ear for rock records, and I'd like to produce. Everybody does. Everybody wants to produce. That's, you know, the next step. There's a lot of lame producers that don't know what they're doing. You know, I just sit back and watch all these unmitigated assholes, you know, try and make hit records that don't know a thing about it. And it's really weird. There's the guy that produced us is a real nice guy, you know. He didn't know what we wanted. He didn't produce our record. His name's on there. It says produced by Dallas Smith. He didn't produce it. We produced it. We told him what we wanted. We mixed it. We did it all. He was just there because he had to be there. You know,
You want that still in the transfer?
Sure. Yeah.
Don't want to give you any hassle.
Oh,
We didn't really mix it.
we did mix it, man. We were sitting here mixing it, man. What did the cat do?
Yeah, but what you were saying.
Get over to Al.
I think that's a vote for
Well, we didn't get the
not
level.
against.
We didn't get the level to start with.
I think that's one of
what all started.
Dallas's strong points.
I want to get you on
Right.
the same question,
We didn't get the
Al.
level.
You know,
That's where it all
if you
starts.
couldn't
That's
make
where it all
money
comes
doing
from.
what you're doing now, you know, where would your head be at? What would you
Well,
be doing?
I'd either get into ethno music halls, you know, there's non-performing aspects, or I might get into botany.
Into what?
Botany.
Botany.
Right. I might do either of them things.
Main reason I guess I'm asking this question is because it's rare that you find such a group of musicians who are completely dedicated to music. Henry, how about you?
Well, I've never done anything else. I've never done an honest day's work. So, if I couldn't play this kind of music, I'd play some other kind of music.
What other kind of music?
Anything. R&B, I'd play.
Larry?
If I couldn't do what I'm doing now, I'd probably just try to get back into a recording thing, you know. Probably produce like Bob's at the same time, something like that, or just, you know, produce maybe, and maybe also just be a studio guy.
Same as Henry, man. I will play another kind of music.
Right.
Maybe I will wash cars or clean the floor someplace. I don't know. But music is my thing, you know, that's all.
Nick brought up a good thing. You might get Nick in to see the record.
Nick Pearls.
Oh yeah, well,
Records.
what were you? What? There you go. Now, what you were saying about if you know, like the musical form might disappear. You mentioned that what Canned Heat is doing is actually dealing with a musical form which has been dead for a long time. So since people are accepting them now, it's less likely that there'll be a fad type thing than some group which shows up today and is gone tomorrow.
Well, I'm not thinking so much in terms of a fad, because I don't think the music is faddish, but in terms of the fact that nothing sells forever.
Well, yeah, that's true, but if you have a blues which is getting pretty, you know, deeply rooted in this country as a musical form, and people were getting interested in it all the time, then you have, as people get uninterested, other people come along and get interested, take their place. So you might have,
That's a
you
good
know,
point.
you might have like residual sales, whereas other people go up and they drop down.
Right. I don't think it's like, say, Fabian.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a good point. How do you guys view what's happening today? I mean, where do you think the record buying public is at today, and where do you think they're headed? Not necessarily in terms of your music, but just in general.
In white or black?
Take your pick.
Well, the black music, the black people are definitely getting away from blues because they don't want to be reminded of cotton picking. You know?
Right.
They'd rather, boogaloo down Broadway. And that's where they're at. And one thing we should say, though, that as much as most of the black people, say they don't like it, that it's Uncle Tom music. All the boogaloo is blues. I mean, if you really get down to it. It came from Mississippi, man. Charlie Patton was playing the first boogaloo records.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
Oh, well,
If you listen to the radio station, well, I don't know, in New York, for instance, as white people get to accept the boogaloo more, and as the Motown starts to make the white lists, the spin going into much more blues stuff.
Well, that may be even
like even R&B.
Wait a minute, let's get this from Al.
Boogaloo, the melodies are descended from Negro religious music, so it has roots in Negro country music, but not so much. Some of the first ones have heavily gospel influence.
Well, how about the white audience? Where do you think they're headed, Mom?
Depends on what section of the country you're in. You get down south, they're boogalooing along with. You go to the West Coast, which is a completely different thing. They're into Cream, Blue Cheer, Canned Heat, Jefferson Airplane, Moby Grape. You go to Cleveland, they're into Simple Simon Says and La La La, I Love You, that type of thing. Depends on where you're at and what section of the country. The Blues Project are popular in the Cleveland, in the Ohio area, and there's not one thing happening all over the country. I mean, if you start in the West Coast and go east, you'll find in every state you go that it's going to be different, that there's something else happening. There are things that are happening all over. Like when we went to Virginia, the only time we went to Virginia, the Jefferson Airplane was a big group at that time. They were getting close to being one of America's biggest groups, and you never heard them in Virginia Beach. I mean, that wasn't it at all. And nobody wanted to hear it. The #1 record in Virginia was Funky Broadway by Wilson Pickett. Well, we left California. That record, as a matter of fact, that record never got in the top 40 at all in California. Yeah, in California it didn't. And so you can't really say where people are at, because it all depends on where you're at. Like Nick said,
there's a lot more of a listening scene in the West Coast now.
They go to see the band
Right.
instead of
listen,
Watch you. Do you think it's just that the East Coast is maybe a year behind the West Coast?
I do personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems.
I would say a year. I'd say
10 years.
No, 18 months.
There's a lot of colored vocal groups in the East making hit records that are never hits in L.A. That's
true.
Well, now wait a minute. Now, has that got anything to do with distribution?
All those records that are being sold in New York we have them in L.A.
There's a market for that.
There's just a market. See,
That's how I used to listen to playing dance.
Wait a minute, Henry.
I'm just saying the dance music is the difference. Like I used to play dance music every night, all night, but now I don't worry about playing dance music. I just play.
Let's see. I guess it's inevitable, and I did a review on you guys for the first record. I went through comparing you to various other white blues bands. I'm just wondering where you guys see yourself in relation to other white blues bands. Not so much in terms of, well, we're better than them or they're better than us, but where the different groups are heading musically.
where they're heading, it's hard to say where they're heading.
Or where they're at.
Or where they're at.
Use amplified harp and featured amplified guitar,
Wilson.
which is usually identified with Chicago. Now he's using horn section and acoustic harmonica, which is associated with Memphis.
Wait.
You ever heard a Buddy Guy record without horns?
No, I'm saying acoustic harmonica.
Forget acoustic harmonica.
Well, I mean, that's on the record. That's been done.
But I've never known.
Also, they do a lot, 2 or 3 tunes that were originally done on records on that.
Duke Records is not Memphis. Duke Records is Texas.
Okay, well, let's not get involved in a theological discussion. How about somebody like Siegel Schwall?
Siegel Schwall is just playing blues. That's all they're doing, and they're country oriented to a sense. They do a mandolin.
Okay, well,
there's no Mississippi influence in the Siegel Schwall band at all. Their influence is strictly a city influence. They're into the individuals. They're good. I'll say up front, they're good band. I mean, It's not I'm not putting the band down on. They're a real good band. They're not as free as we are. I mean, they stay pretty. They stay pretty down. You know, pretty much down to a.
Larry?
They're not using anything with power, like, you know, to play free. So it roars more, you know. Jumps octaves, all kinds of things.
Whole different technique. Another important feature is that the drone has not reached them. And that's a weird thing. That's how you can tie the very beginning to the very free, is because the drone is a characteristic of a lot of early Mississippi and Texas blues, and so you can use a background of that nature, like on the boogie, which is old, and then do anything over it using blue notes, and then very freedom. So you can tie both ends together that way. But the Siegel Schwal and Butterfield haven't been reached by the drone, so there's a difference of approach there.
Blue Swallow is more of a visual type thing, you know, to me, than listening type thing. Cat really does his thing, you know, harmonica, you know, really gets on his knees and jumps around a lot of stuff.
Plays good.
Yeah, he plays good, but I mean, it's more like that really a visual thing, you know. The cat's up there really just getting it on, you know, as far as like. The band last night.
The Jay Giles Blues Band, local.
I think they're really good. So.
Yeah, they want to do this heard across the country. Very recommended.
Stock blues.
Bob?
The Electric Flag is not a blues band. In print, everywhere, the Electric Flag is billed as a blues band, and they are not a blues band.
Why aren't they?
Because they don't play blues.
That's a damn good point. I haven't heard them.
They can, no, let me put it this way, yeah. Dear Mike Bloomfield, when you're reading this. They're very capable of playing blues, but they're not. And they're boogalooing, and they're, you know, so that's what they are. They're playing R&B. And so I don't think they can be included in this discussion of blues bands. Because they just don't play blues. In Monterey, they played one blues. They played Angels in Houston, Buddy Miles sang. It was really fine. But the rest of it was all R&B. That's, I don't know. I always, you know, Mike always impressed me as being really a blues cat, and I was really ready at Monterey to hear a new great blues band, and it didn't happen. I heard a great band, you know, a great R&B band, but I didn't hear a blues band. There's a lot of blues bands popping up. In Detroit, there's one called the Amboy Dukes. I haven't heard them live yet. I've heard their record. I guess I'd rather hear their record than Judy Collins.
Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal, yes.
A highly recommended young group, blues group, right? That would be recommended as one of the better young blues groups.
Now, Taj is very country oriented.
I think it's one of the best country blues.
Actually, there are very few country oriented bands. Let's see, there's you guys and there's Taj, and that's the only one I would really call country. Yeah. Why do you think this is the case? Why do you think most of the white blues bands are city-oriented rather than country?
Simple. They've never heard country blues. Where do you hear country blues?
On reissue records.
Well, you know, like the average person when he's going through the blues bin in the local record shop sees all these Belzona albums and the Origin albums and the blues classic albums. Then he sees the best of Muddy Waters and the best of Little Walter. And that's where he's going. He's going to be, that he knows. He's heard of Muddy Waters. He's never heard of Charlie Patton. He's never heard of Henry Thomas. He's never heard of Willie Brown. And the only way a person like that's going to buy an album like that is if they happen to drop over to a friend's house that has one of those albums. And he hears it and goes, yeah, that's really good. And then he goes down to the record shop and he buys the record. But when you're going through that blues bin and you really don't know much about it, you know you like blues and you want to hear some blues and you want to own a blues album, you're not going to buy one of those Origins or Belzona albums. You're going to buy one of those Chess albums. That's just the way it is. People just don't hear it. You don't hear it on the radio that has one of those albums. And he hears it and goes, yeah, that's really good. And then he goes down to the record shop and he buys the record. But when you're going through that blues bin and you really don't know much about it, you know you like blues and you want to hear some blues and you want to own a blues album, you're not going to buy one of those Origins or Belzona albums. You're going to buy one of those Chess albums. That's just the way it is. People just don't hear it. You don't hear it on the radio. Henry and I tried it in L.A., and we played 6 hours of blues on a Christmas program on our little FM station we've got in L.A., which is knocking the hell out of all the top 40 stations.
Which one is that?
KPPC. It's the sister station to KMPX.
Actually, that was plugging from Tom's radio.
Right.
Yeah, he has a uncle,
WBUR.
Yeah, WBUR. He has a blues show every Tuesday night, and like it's one of the best blues shows I've ever heard on the radio ever. Except for the ones that Bob and Henry did in L.A. on KPPC, but this was really a good one.
Larry.
Tuesday night they have a blues show, and they really play some good, fine records.
One way I think you could say the West Coast is a year or two ahead is that's the first location where the FM stations with anti-top 40 format became popular, first in San Francisco, where groups like Hendrix and the Cream, blues-influenced, instrumental-dominated modern groups that did not have hits on the top 40 received a lot of airplay, not to mention John Fahey and a little country blues. And now in L.A. it's catching on, and it's just starting here in the East to catch on. And that's I think, real upswing in the taste of the average. Attention span of the average young listener is increasing.
Now, by catching on, you mean it's hitting a mass audience, say, comparable to one of the top 40 stations, or?
In L.A. it is. It's the FM station is now a serious competitor with the top 40 stations, and I don't know if it's a direct result, but one of the top 40 stations went under and went all news, and one of the others is falling off in listener interest.
I find this weird for one very important reason. L.A., of all places, is automobile-oriented, and this is where most of the top 40 get their listenership. Somebody's driving around, he's got his radio on.
I guess that would be true in
FM?
cars, but when they get home at night and sit around at night listening, particularly late at night, like, say, the 12 to 6 shows, or to a lesser extent, the 8 to 12 shows. Then they turn on the FM. When they can turn on the FM. When they can't, they'll turn on the top 40.
People just don't like to hear, all right, kids, top 40s, they hate it. You know, it's really a drag to listen to those disc jockeys scream and holler.
One way to get around this, the AM, FM thing is, particularly in the West Coast, is a really large number are getting tape decks, and they forget the radio completely and buy 10 good albums and play tape decks when they're in the car and ignore the radio.
Groups like ourselves and Butterfield are putting blues on the album charts, and that, I think, is a very major step. I don't think 5 years ago you could have put a blues album in the Bubbling Under section on Billboard. But today, people are buying it.
Where's your album currently?
Our album currently is been on the charts 2 weeks. It's at been on 4 weeks. What's the number? 106. 106.
The first one made 75.
The first one made 75, and it was Billboard. In Record World, it was in the low 60s.
What's the highest the blues album has made?
Butterfield made 51.
Butterfield's gotten to 51 on East West, which I think is a great, a great thing to happen. That shows you that there are people in this country that want to hear blues.
I want to add a thing to that, which is, just as a listener, the Canned Heat's done something which I don't think anybody else has done, which is to put the post-war flat pick guitar on top of the pre-war finger pick guitar.
Right.
And that's something, which is, as far as I know, unique in the field.
Henry is the post-war and Alan's the pre-war. That's another thing I'd like to point out. I think bringing back the drone, as you guys have done, if it ever was gone, is another major thing. Do you see other people doing the same thing, following your lead on the drone yet?
No. James Brown's past 3 records have been a drone. Really strange.
This is one of the most surprising developments in music I've heard in the last 6 months. I really flipped out over the latest James Brown album, which is the kind of thing that I previously didn't like at all, because I heard about 8 songs and 7 of them were just a drone.
Now, do you think?
I think it's independent origination. Now, the British groups, Hendrix and Cream, approaching it from a different angle.
From the Indian thing.
Yes, I think that, and in Hendrix's case, blues too, use a lot of drone. So I think these things are converging and will create more interest in the drone.
Why don't you clarify?
Well, I like the points. I like the
Drone is no chord changes. Drone is you take 5, 6 notes that sound good in the blues and you put it over a
By drone you
sustained.
mean one chord.
That's right.
or
Okay,
working within
Catfish
the frame
on our
of one
records,
chord.
the following numbers are drone numbers. Catfish, Dark Road, Rich Woman, The Boogie, and On the Road Again. Those are drone numbers.
Okay, you don't mean hanging on to one note or two notes like a tambura.
No, that can
necessarily
be
limited
part of
to
it. That could, that's right.
You have something I think to mention about Albert King that you mentioned to me the other day about that record. Because I heard about Albert King first from you.
Oh, it's no big thing. It's just, I spent a lot of time recommending the LP across the U.S. on the basis of the titles I saw on it, and I had the 45s, but the 45s are preferable, although I usually prefer LP, the 45s are preferable because the mixing presents a more vivid and wider guitar sound.
Yeah, the album sort of falls a little bit flat.
Wait, do you have that? Do you have the stereo to play that album in?
Yeah, I fool around. If you have the 45s, you get the guitar sound 6 times as wide.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, on the album, the guitar has a very, very thin sound.
Why do people listen to blues? There are lots of reasons, but what do you think are the most important ones?
Why do people listen to any kind of music?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Basically likable.
Because it's likable. I mean, that's always a hard. Why do people listen to blues? Why do people listen to country and western? Because they like it.
Okay, the sort of thing I'm thinking about is that I think a lot of people who are not too much into blues tend to get the impression that it's either really very introspective or very extroverted and nothing in between, and you listen to it either to cry to or to dance to.
That's propaganda.
Yeah.
Propaganda.
Okay, now I sort of wanted to get your opinion on statements like that, whether you feel that's really the function of blues, if it has a function.
Well, as far as blues having a function, blues, it definitely has a function because it's a way of expressing yourself. Like you heard this bullshit, white people don't have blues. Hey, I've had my old lady leave me, and I've had to pay my bills, and I've been in trouble, so I know what it's like to have the blues. Now, granted, I've never been forced to sit in the back of a bus, but I have been kicked out of restaurants because I have long hair, and I think it's, when I'm up there singing, I'm expressing myself. Alan, the two songs Alan sings on the album, he's really expressing himself. He wrote those tunes, and that's his troubles and problems he's singing about on those tunes. And he's not black.
Al, do you have anything to say on that particular area?
I think this business of, not to sound like a broken record, but I see it's all tied in the upswing in Indian and in British groups. For instance, the Beatles are also, some of their things are heavily drone influenced. I think it's a swing away from interest in Ricky Tick changes. And I think a modal music either fascinates a person or it bores him. In history, it goes through periods where playing the 5, 6 notes a lot just bores the average person, and then it goes through periods where there's a compelling. It's compelling. Now we're going through one of them periods where the modes compel the interest of the listener. Then, and that's seen in all these fields, all different areas are coming in to favor now, and that's the only thing I can see that ties them together. Is the young listener is interested in the type of music which harps on a certain set of notes and a minimal set of chord changes. There's a certain insistency about it that I think is getting a reaction.
As we gather in memory of Alan Christie Wilson, we recognize that we have known him at various stages of his life pilgrimage. We've glimpsed different aspects of his personality, the fullness of his being,